Друзі, вітаю вас.
Greetings, dear friends. Today, the National Platform of Sustainability and Cohesion continues to tell you about the studies of the problems of sustainability in Ukraine vertically with the participation of state authorities and also with participation of public, journalists, volunteers, and also those who work in the communities. Actually, today, the topic of the study that we would like to share with you is sustainability of communities through the prism of Telegram on the occupied, deoccupied frontline and rear territories. Sample of the study is more than 400 Telegram channels in 17 cities of Ukraine. In total, we analyzed approximately 2 million publications. Today, during the presentation, we will try to talk and to discuss the information on the formation of the discourse of local Telegram channels, methods of Russian propaganda, and its impact on the sustainability of communities, as well as the ratio of pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian Telegram channels. Today, we invite to discussion very interesting speakers. First of all, I would like to present Volodymyr Lupatsiy. This is co-founder of the National Platform for Sustainability and Cohesion, which together with the NGO and CPD, they were the authors, actually, those who ordered this study. I greet Ksenia Iliuk. Today she will be with us online. Actually, she will present the core of this study of Telegram channels in Ukraine. She's the Chief Operating Officer of the company LetsData, and she is one of the authors of the study. I would like to present Yulia Kaplan, who is an expert of the National Sustainability and Cohesion Platform, with the help of whom today we will be able to assess the perception of the content from Telegram channels in the communities, how this impacted people, their actions, because Yulia was involved for the study with the focus groups in communities, and it's very important to understand how actually people think about that, people at places. Also, we have OlehPokalchuk with us today, social and military psychologist. And with his help, I hope we will be able to talk today about the change of the discourse. We will compare what kind of discourse we had during the study, and maybe we can discuss what might be changed in the future. Using the opportunity, I would like to mention that, as a matter of fact, these days, let us say so, it's the second year since in Ukraine the concept of ensuring stability of national sustainability developed and already signed by the president is functioning, and literally 2 words how this concept determines sustainability. Because if we talk about the national platform and also during our discussion, we are talking about resilience. And actually the concept, it determines sustainability as a complex of actions for the public and for the state before, during, and after the crisis. And also this concept pays attention to the fact that the threats, the core of the threats has changed. It's a bit different that we used to have before the full-scale invasion. Therefore, today we are also going to discuss this. So, dear friends, I would like to give the floor to the co-founder of National Platform, Volodymyr Lupatsiy, who will be able to tell us about the general big study that was done by the program during this year, what kind of work we've done, and what was in the focus of those who studied. Thank you very much. Just a few words about the National Platform of Sustainability and Cohesion. This is a consortium of analytical centers which is supported by the European Union. As far as today, most countries, most EU countries and NATO countries, they stick to this strategic approach of resilience. And Ukraine, in this sense, is demonstrating not only heroism and sustainability and various practices that help the communities and the state in general. Ukraine faced integrated challenges that include military aggression. They include destruction of important infrastructure, and they include massive displacement of people and growth of humanitarian crisis risks. So not a single country, neither in EU nor in NATO, have faced such challenges. Therefore, according to our assessments, our studies, and studies of international experts, analysis of Ukraine's experience allows to make a step towards forming new standards of resilience and review the approaches that were used both in EU and NATO countries. Actually, study of resilience is part of our project, and the platform was the one to order and to formulate the technical task for our experts, sociologists, and the study itself was really holistic and had three components. Sociological study, where we try to understand how public opinion lives these events through and what is the attitude towards sustainability of Ukraine. Secondly, these are focus groups, and there we wanted to go, so to say, in depth and on existential level. We wanted to hear why people are worried, what is the reason of their worries in different regions, and what kind of expectations they have, and so on. And the third component is analysis of activity of Telegram channels. This is the micro-level system, which is very important because it is impacting the expectations, motivation for activity of many citizens, and also their psychological resilience and how able they are to cope with the risks brought by war, and this is impacting their surviving. I would like to mention a few more words about the study. We presented that separately, and you can learn about the results on our internet resources of the national platform, on the website of our national platform, in Facebook, the webpage of the national platform. But in two words, on the national level, when we were questioning people, we saw that public opinion, there is really high level of trust still to political and military commanders of Ukraine. And if we sum up this with a sentence, so to say, then I would say that citizens of Ukraine, they trust the president, but they are praying for the armed forces of Ukraine. Second moment, as for the expectations, quite high level is there of people who think that Ukraine will be able to return the territories, and there is understanding that we cannot do that in few weeks or even months. That is in spite of that this is the mass and public opinion, there is rationalism in the assessment of the situation from our people. And the last thing, the attitude to the end of war. The biggest amount of our citizens are not ready to have peace on Putin's conditions or any conditions. So expectation of fair peace, expectation that we will return our territories, expectations that aggressor under pressure of military losses and international sanctions will bear responsibility for the crimes. Aggressor has to pay for the destruction that happened in Ukraine, and correspondingly expectation of sustainable peace, that is peace based not only on international guarantees but also on having modern army and having own defense, and security complex. That is, in these directions, Ukraine is trying to cooperate with our international partners. And the last issue, in order to make the bridge, so to say, to the studies in Telegram channels, we asked a very interesting question. Choose 5 institutions that are most efficient today. And we had many institutions. So, the first 3 are Armed Forces of Ukraine, President, and volunteers. This is like positive from the point of view of the fact that either some things are causing like red or yellow lamp. This is assessment of activities of regional authorities. That is this stereotype that the level of trust is bigger to regional authorities than to central authorities. At the times of war, the situation changed upside down. So there's low trust to local authorities, local self-governments, and this has to be taken into account also by donors, for example, because this is a problem that we have to solve. And also about the media. What can we see straight away is that there is low level of assessment of local media. It means that either there are no local media under the conditions of war and financial restrictions, or this is a really low level of trust. And this means that indeed social networks, Telegram channels remain probably the only tools that create, so to say, the field for public communication, even in online space or virtual space, and they allow to articulate the voice of communities, voice of regions. And actually, this is the position for the start, which allows communities to go out or go beyond the boundaries of their bulbs and either say that there's SOS signal, or they can formulate their readiness to self-help, but also they should understand that they need some help from the side of donors and state authorities. So next, I would like to give the floor to our colleagues who will tell you in more details actually about what is happening on this information front, because from the opposite side, there are information trips, and against them, there is a volunteer community of our bloggers, TikTokers, and so on, and moderators of Telegram channels. Thank you. Thank you very much, Volodymyr. Of course, maybe this is not the worst case when great public can also together with the state bodies withstand all of that in information field. And dear friends who are online, please, you can ask your questions in Facebook or in Zoom. Now I would like to give the floor actually to Ms. Ksenia. Let us talk about our communication resilience in country. How do you assess vulnerabilities and the ways to cope with them? Hello. Thank you very much to all of those who joined us today, to those who are listening. Well, I will go to the presentation of the study straight away. Actually, the study was done by our team, by LetsData. It was focused on Telegram channels, and I will begin with the methodology. The study is quite large scale. I will try to mention the key insights here, but I will pay your attention to the moments where we can dig deeper, and I advise you to look at the study in details, like those dozens of visualizations that show the condition of local Telegram in Ukraine. Well, actually, first of all, as for the cities, we started with looking for local Telegram channels, and we were analyzing only Telegram channels and comments where these comments are allowed in the Telegram channel. We did not analyze the communities, taking into account sensitivity, personal safety, and so on. We focused on open channels. And actually, the logic was to take the cities. You now can see the settlements, the cities whose local Telegram channels we were analyzing, and maybe to stress that the category of the channel is showing the status of the city as of March this year, when actually we were getting all the amount of data and considering the status from the moment when we did that to understand these moments, because some cities were changing their category, as you can see, and they went from one category to the other one. Like we started, and among these cities, we had more than 1,000 of Telegram channels that were there. 14% were not working at the moment already, and we narrowed down a bit, and we made it out of 500 Telegram channels, and finally we analyzed the content of 427 Telegram channels to be precise, and actually the sample shows the size of cities, number of subscribers, how popular it is, and so on and so forth. You can see more details in the methodology of the study. We took all the content published by these channels during 3 periods. So we took 3 months. The first month, it's the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Russia. Second period is a period where a powerful wave of deoccupation and liberation of Ukrainian settlements from under the control of Russia. And third period, end of October and November, when Ukrainians massively suffered from problems with electricity and so on. So like the third type of resilience test, so to say. So we were taking these periods and we analyzed more than 2 million of messages, and we used more complicated techniques of machine learning in order to process the data in qualitative way. So these are the key things about methodology. Let us see what did we learn in the process of our study. So actually here you can see as for the number of Telegram channels in each category in percentages, and also their number of subscribers that they've got. It's very interesting that the frontline territories, for example, they have not the biggest percentage, and also the number of subscribers, what we can see. But when we were classifying those channels as pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian, it's interesting, of course, that in all the 4 categories, pro-Ukrainian Telegram channels were dominating. I mean, with numbers. That is, the number of these channels is much and much bigger. As you can see in rear cities, it's 95% and more than 80% and so on and so forth. Even when we are talking about occupied territories, like fully occupied, we see that Ukrainian channels, yes, indeed, they are. There are less of those. But we can be happy, or we can be not satisfied with that. But yes, we see Ukrainian channels less on occupied territory and more of those on deoccupied and frontline territories. But the peculiarity of pro-Russian Telegram channels is that maybe even the number of those is smaller, but the number of content is much bigger than information produced by pro-Ukrainian channels, because it's like minute by minute they are showing some local issues. And the second difference between the pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian Telegram channels is that pro-Russian, they are really interconnected. That is, the number of reposts that they are making between the regions, so to say, it is much higher than the one that is done by pro-Ukrainian. They are interconnected. There are very clear signs of coordination, so to say, certain narratives, and also spreading certain information, spreading their messages. But what is important to mention, if we look in general at this ecosystem, then the ecosystem, so to say, is such that the closer we come to the occupied territories that were occupied from the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the more we look at the dynamics from the beginning, that is, from the beginning till now, unfortunately, the number of pro-Ukrainian voices becomes smaller, and the importance also is reducing of these voices. I mean, it's more difficult, not technically, because technically Telegram has no limitations and we can actually create Telegram channels and target at any audience. I mean, it is more complicated due to safety reasons. Like, it is dangerous for people on the occupied territories to read Ukrainian news channels and so on. If we go deeply into the content, what we can see, this is something that works for all the categories. So during these 3 periods that we were analyzing, so again, I encourage you to take a look at the report, because we have the analysis there for each category regarding the time. What is interesting that in local Telegram channels, indeed, local issues are of great importance. If we compare pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian, pro-Russian have a very cool mix, really cool, of local issues and international issues. That is hyper-locally, like Russian, pro-Russian Telegram channels, they are working very well. They can take some information that is happening in the town or in the settlement and find its relationship with something that happens in Kosovo. So, and here is one of the conclusions also about the content as for the difference of pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian channels, is that pro-Russian very often interpret events. They can inform much less about what is happening, for example, even if these are neutral or positive events for them, but straight away they are explaining the given interpretation of this event. And sometimes, here we don't have to rush ahead and say, like, Ukrainians are sticking to facts and they're providing only facts. This is not the case. The thing is that they are explaining this in context. And our ecosystem of Telegram on local level, it is lacking. We have a lot of facts. Like, for example, this country gave such an amount of aid to Ukraine. And actually, the pro-Russian Telegram channels will explain straight away what it means, what will begin out of that, what might be the next steps. And in Ukraine, those are only dry facts. So this is like the zone or the space for improvements that can be made. In general, I also mentioned international aid, any topics regarding international aid, support of Ukrainians, like internally and externally, all of that always got a huge number of reviews, especially Ukrainians who are on the occupied territories or frontline territories. They wrote in the comments how important it is for them to hear such words of support, both for those who are in Ukraine and those who are abroad, because it gives them a clear signal that people did not forget about them. People remember them. People take care of them. And this is like the thread that we have this connection. We have to have this connection between the categories. Of course, we formatted them, but the interconnection of these categories in real life is very, very important for people. What they mentioned in the comments, actually. It is also important to mention about the pro-Russian Telegram channels, the infrastructure of Telegram. Russia was preparing that for the full-scale invasion. That is, we saw Telegram channels created like literally in one day or during the first days of the full-scale invasion for each settlement which Russia planned to occupy. And the geography was quite wide, much wider than they managed actually to occupy. And actually, this says that there was certain preparation done, and people wanted, like, there was clear understanding that people have to be insulated in this Telegram space, and actually there they should provide their information to people. And we have clear signals that the number of subscribers of such pro-Russian Telegram channels was really artificial. That is, there were cities where we can see like 80% of subscribers came to the channel, but actually on that day there in the city there was no internet connection, nothing like that. And it is probably that people joined. It is hard to believe that people joined these Russian Telegram channels when they had no internet. So we can see how people were put there artificially. And then we can also see that pro-Russian Telegram channels, they were trying to get people in a really sly manner. That is, they had not pro-Russian position at first, and then it was a bit like changing over time. And at the beginning, mostly that provided information what pharmacies are open, what is still working, where you can get help, or when humanitarian aid will be delivered, and only afterwards the number of all these things changed. I'm really sorry, Ksenia, you have like 3-4 minutes and that's it. Yes, indeed, the study is huge and I want to tell a lot of things. That is why I encourage you to take a look. So we had narratives and messages for each category, and the comparison in one category, pro-Ukrainian and pro-Russian narratives and messages, even look at the number. So the number and variety of pro-Russian messages and narratives is much bigger than Ukrainian ones, but Ukrainian ones are really constructive and they were really systemic. And here you can see what was there on a systemic manner, where we have the positive feedback from the audience. That is what messages really people associate with and people live with. A separate part is interconnection of Telegram channels. Also, we have a lot of insights about each category. And here I would like to mention the role of those Telegram channels that are these bridges between cities and regions, because one of the facts that we can see straight away is that we don't have enough connections. Very often, people don't know what is happening to the neighboring settlement or town. People don't feel this geographical unity, so to say, and there are a few Telegram channels like Suspilne Telegram channels that are uniting this local agenda with more like national agenda. And again, here we have a lot of interesting things and opportunities that we can use for our resilience. And in general, if we sum up what is our resilience via the prism of Telegram, if we look at that, then pro-Ukrainian voices, they are really strong and powerful in spite of the huge number of pro-Russian Telegram channels, or those Telegram channels that pretend to be pro-Ukrainian, even though they are trying to provide pro-Russian information. So again, I would like to encourage everyone to take a closer look at this huge study that has 70 pages, because there are some practical things that we can start doing already now. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Ksenia. I would like to mention straight away that at the end of our today's meeting, you will be able to see the full study on the website of the National Platform for Sustainability and Cohesion. I would like to mention straight away, Ksenia, that indeed this interpretation or narrative part might be strengthened in Ukrainian information field. And recently we were communicating with the communities on preparing for the winter period, and they say that they receive different data with no explanation about what is expecting them during the winter. That is, one representative can say that there will be no electricity, the other one says that will be electricity, but we don't have the narrative about the, so to say, connections between the reasons and the consequences, meaning between what used to be and what will be, like what do people have to prepare themselves to. So this explanation is very important for Ukrainian segment, and that is why I would like to give the floor to Yulia Kaplan, expert of the national platform, and we can talk with her about the perception of the content that Ksenia just mentioned. And I would like also to address you in particular about your assessment about these two systems. Centralized, this is our marathon, how is it impacting people in the regions, and also this decentralized communication system, I mean the Telegram channels, how they either maybe compete or they complement each other. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. I would like to return to our project explaining all the components. The advantage of it is that it has a few components. The first thing, just like Andriy mentioned, it's the quantitative study that we conducted all over Ukraine. Secondly, those are results of the study of Telegram channels that were just presented by Ksenia. And third aspect is qualitative studies that we conducted in April and May this year among the activists or the agents of impact, as we call them. Those are people with active position. They are from different fields of business and public sector, non-governmental sector, and also they had journalists among them. And this study gave the opportunity to understand the reasons of the numbers that we see, for example, in the quantitative study. And this is what was mentioned by Volodymyr, that, for example, mistrust to local authorities or absence of the part of local media in informing, that is in qualitative study, in deep interviews with our respondents, we found answers to these questions. And I guess the first I would like to start with, like, if we assess information and communication part of the state policy, or in general information and communication policy in Ukraine, we have to mention that there is a huge request from the society for truthful, objective information from central authorities, local authorities, and from experts. And I can say that the things that we see in deep interviews, people are ready to perceive this information. Society is quite ready in this sense. As for the informing, that is, if we distinguish communication and informing, then the opinions among the respondents whom we involved to this, opinions were different. Well, of course, first of all, we were talking about the marathon, how necessary it is, how successful it is. And I would like to say that almost all of them, and it's 60 respondents all over Ukraine, and some focus groups also, they mentioned that at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, first 2 or 3 months, the marathon played incredibly important role. And first of all, this is about uniting people, informing from the side of the authorities about where do we go, where do we move, and also being patriots, that is, uniting people around patriotic motives. And this is really positively mentioned. From the other side, when such 3 most hot, so to say, months ended, we received more sources of information, experts, bloggers, various YouTube and Telegram channels. That is, the number of information sources is growing. And people receive the possibility to get information from other sources and with other interpretation. And then what was mentioned by our respondents is that they felt this gap between the information which is given in the marathon and the reality which exists again from other sources of information, and people just felt that they are lacking this relevance of the marathon in real life. Even more, it's not a secret. Many men, many women are now at war. We all have relatives who are now on the front line, and the things happening at the front line, this is the information from the, so to say, from the source, first hands, from our relatives, for example, or loved ones. And even in spite of the fact that there are some issues with the marathon about it being objective, but some part, I think that if we can sum up approximately half of our respondents from in-depth interview, they said that it should continue. The only thing is that some accents should be changed. We don't have extra positive picture, but people are ready to perceive the problems that are there on the front line, problems in state policy, economy, social policy. People are ready to face that. And by the way, we had such narratives in our information field that the marathon costs money. It requires a lot of finance. People didn't speak much about that, just separate respondents. And by the way, we had some issues with the Russian-speaking channels, Freedom and Top, and existence and financing of these channels that are oriented for Russians and Russian-speaking audience. Now people do not see the necessity of these things. That is, they change nothing. They cannot impact the target audience. Therefore, people should not finance those. It is better to give the money for the armed forces of Ukraine. This is about the national issues. As for the communication, the leader in communication with the population is the president of Ukraine. His everyday speeches are mentioned almost in all media, and this is important. I would like to underline that the president can balance, give positive and negative news. And he's doing that in a really balanced manner, and he's got people's trust. Now, if we move to local level, here, of course, we have more problems, and indeed, these are some things that give us the opportunity to, thanks to our study, it allows us 3 minutes, Yulia? Yeah. 3 minutes. Why there is such a low trust to local authorities and the part of the role of local media in their impact or informing or communicating with the community. As a matter of fact, on the local level, if we are talking about communication, then it is insufficient according to the assessment of our respondents. Local authorities do not communicate, or they communicate in such a manner that which is not really clear or accessible, available for the community, and it's a big problem. That is the communication of local authorities with population, and from the other side, sources of information. How do they communicate? And here also is a separate aspect, and we forget about that in Kyiv already. If we are talking about zone of active military actions and communities that are in such zones, or communities that are under shellings and they have problems with electricity supply or internet connection, they have no access do the marathon. They don't have access to some digital means of information, but the printed information, like some printed media, is important for them. In Zaporizhia, for example, we had a representative from local authorities, and he said that they are supporting the local newspaper in Zaporizhia because Zaporizhia is without electricity all the time, and it is really worth giving this paper version of the newspaper. So again, this is a direction for state policy, for local governments, how they can improve informing population on the local level and improve the communication. Summing up, what made me happy, we have a really good society because our society understands a lot about the information field. They have pretty critical thinking and they're ready to perceive more objective and truthful information, and we how to use that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Yulia. I would like to address Oleh straight away. Let us make a bridge for the future, like continuing what Ksenia mentioned, Volodymyr mentioned, and Yulia. From your point of view, how do you assess these like intrusion to Ukrainian discourse from like external sources? We mentioned that we might have some powerful sources of information and we have a few realities for people that are created. How can they coexist in the head of a certain person? And from your point of view, what kind of dynamics do you see right now in online discourse? What did we have? What is now? And what do we expect? If you things I would like to mention, the information impact, that you demonize some impact, but we have to assess how they affect behavior. If as a result of the attempts to change that the consciousness of a person doesn't change, then the only difference that matters is money for the people who wrote that. And a lot is told about strengthening the qualitative part of Russian impact, and here we have to divide that into the things that we see and that we don't see. Studies and media field tell us about the propaganda part of the information flow, and somehow they are calling that information operations. And I usually say that if indeed information operation is done against you, you cannot see that because they are really efficient. What we see is propaganda. Propaganda is always trying to take into account people of their country and also those people whom they consider theirs or potentially theirs. So nothing changes with the impact of propaganda. However, information impact can never stand on its own, stand aside, so to say. It's not some kind of a miracle that you just spread this and then those whom you don't like disappear. It's always there. The propaganda impact always accompanies something. Telegram, what is that? We have to consider that along with Facebook, because discrimination policy of Ukrainian segment. It's it's like the shepherd when so they are putting sheep into the open gates. So this is kind of a more freedom because like subscribe to my Telegram channel, here I am banned and so on and so forth. So what's out of it? It turns out that this content in Telegram is full of information about emotional and psychological condition. For users of Telegram, people speak like openly. They are happy that they can publish photos and so on and so forth. And of course, as there's a department, the relevant department of the SSU, which is conducting counterintelligence operations in information field. We see the reports every day, but the biggest part I would like to mention of information and terrorist activity is done in darknet. What kind of prospects we can see? Well, the general part of propaganda, classical propaganda, how we call it, reduced. And the part of other types of information impact increased. Special operations, I mean, they are more local, they are more qualified, I would say. For example, Ukrainian language, good Ukrainian language, is used in comparison with some weird attempts that they were trying to say something, but now they are doing that with pretty good quality. What kind of markers we can say there will be in the future? Like, there will be new issues. You know, good agents, they do not come with their chevrons. They have to be super radical, patriotic, and so on, and they try to do that as a trend. Secondly, good Russians will activize and they will change their activity in information space. Third, new Western speakers will be involved because we are still like saying like somebody wrote something like in Washington Post and like okay, tomorrow it will be of huge importance. And of course, the idiots, because not a single information space can't exist without that. It's like the person who is thinking that they are making the efforts for the better and it ends up with something which came to the worst. So these idiots are used by enemies very often because they cost nothing, they are easily motivated, it is easy to fool them, and like these are like the operations under the flag of the enemy. More often the mistakes of our authorities will be used because if earlier the credit of trust, as it was mentioned, to society and to authorities was of such a level that actually people preferred not to see something and so on. So now this honeymoon phase has ended and the society will have more questions, more offers. 2 minutes. Yeah, and well, what else can I add? So I guess that's it. If we talk briefly, if you have some questions, I can add. Thank you very much, Mr. Oleg. We have a question from our audience. The first is, I think it's more to Volodymyr. Maybe that's about the general study. What you mentioned actually. Is church among the institutes trusted by people? If yes, then where it is. Briefly mentioning, did we include that to our study? Yes, we have church. Now I cannot speak about the numbers from my head. I don't remember everything, but there are regional differences because certain regions, the impact of religious organizations somewhere is more powerful, somewhere less powerful. These are like cities and villages, east and west. So these things do not change even during the war. Second issue is related to the fact that still this impact is local. So what was mentioned, it does not solve the problem of the discourse of regional and local. Thank you very much. We have some questions to Ksenia. What are the criteria assessing the voice as pro-Russian or pro-Ukrainian? Thank you very much. The criterion was very simple. Two criteria, content and connection. The content, it's like half of publications, they have pro-Russian narratives and messages. Interconnection is like interconnection with the openly pro-Russian Telegram channels or Russian Telegram channels that are spreading their content. And in general, I'd like to add a very important thing here, that is, as for pro-Russian category, everything is much easier than with the pro-Ukrainian. Why? I will explain. Because pro-Ukrainian category, in general sense and narrative sense, it mostly, in most part of its content, it is pro-Ukrainian, but we can see the huge number of Telegram channels that obviously started after the full-scale invasion, and people did that in order to receive commercial interest. That is, there was a certain number of subscribers, and they published maximally like bright and quick videos of what happened or where is the rocket hit and so on, just to get the big amount of subscribers. As soon as they got the big amount of subscribers, the channels, like this is open information, they started showing their price in order to buy the advertisement. And here we have a huge question, because as for the ethics code, we don't know what kind of advertisement do they take or not, and we can just observe more and more cases when such Telegram channels can even, like, we can see that at certain point somebody bought them, that is and their rhetoric changed greatly. So this is the category that we have to look at really carefully, because partially it belongs to pro-Ukrainian, but there's a lot of potential risks with that. Okay, thank you very much. I have a question to all the participants. From your point of view, how do you analyze the situation that we heard about right now? From one side, we see a lot of telegrams in the regions. From the other side, from the same communities, people are all often talking that the authorities have monopoly on informing the population. How do you think now, during the war, should the authorities have monopoly for information policy? How can it work with the realities that we are discussing as of today? Maybe first it's Mr. Oleh and then Volodymyr, Yulia, and Ksenia. Well, authorities always have monopoly for information policy in any country. The question is, how do they use this monopoly and how do they think about the consequences? So we have to look at the middle term and long term perspectives, and this has to be also in line with social expectations, including there was a study. I will explain that in simpler words. Well, actually, I am mostly for the control of authorities, for the authorities to control the media, because as a specialist, I understand that the consequences of such harsh control over time will show the worst side of it. So, with all my wish to have some harsh measures right away, we have to structure them and to have details as much as possible. The problem in legal field, for example, some sabotage exists as the event, but like, for example, lawyers know the history of that. Like the SSU, every day they find out about such people who are doing that, but without the consolidated position, without participation from our citizens, we won't achieve the result. Thank you very much, Volodymyr. I guess I agree with the previous speaker, because as some answer, as far as we are coming to an end, as far as I understand, I would like to draw certain conclusion and recommendations from what we heard. Our first message, so to say, to all the structures who are doing that, I mean information safety and so on, is to get rid of the illusions that Ukraine went out of the impact of information of Russian Federation. They came from the back entrance, and this is in Telegram channels and so on and so forth. So we are talking about occupation of part of regional information space, and we have to combat this. Second, volunteer groups of this territorial defense regional information space, they need certain support, coordination, interaction with the national and regional authorities, including trainings. These are different. It's not only about money. third moment, in order for, this support should be materialized in certain document or action. So this has to be a plan of actions, for example, on the occupation of informational space, which will set up certain priorities. So on number 4, implementation of such action plan has to rely on the existing Telegram networks and efficient Telegram, like our pro-Ukrainian Telegram channels. That is, we don't have to create something from the scratch and say that this is something we cannot do. LetsData or some digital projects. One more issue, actually, what was mentioned, this plan of actions, how to set up the task that, okay, probably we have to look at the model of behavior of our president and to ensure presence in media space. And again, they can do that in cooperation with Ukrainian Telegram channels. And finally, this problem of defending regional information space and development of local media has to be put in front of donors who are also assessing the needs of Ukraine in ensuring resilience, including information resilience. So briefly, our political recommendation can sound like that. Thank you very much, Volodymyr. Yulia, Ksenia, just 1 minute. Well, in order to add to what Mr. Volodymyr mentioned, I would like to say that yes, Telegram is very important as an information channel as of today, but it doesn't have to be the only one. As of today, this is where we are moving. It is convenient. It is working even if the internet connection is weak, and it's the advantage for that. But it doesn't have to be the only one. And moreover, not all people can use this source of information, like, for example, people of senior age. So still, if we are talking about communities, we need to find some other information channels and for informing and communicating with population. Thank you very much, Ksenia. Well, actually, this study shows that one of the elements of communication resilience against the enemy's impact means that we have decentralized communication. So that is, we don't have this monopoly for information. We had many cases, so many cases of cool coordination between local media and local influencers. So that is, many gaps that were mentioned by colleagues were covered in such a manner. Of course, there is part concerning the military actions and how things are going, and here militaries have their own rules and rights, and it's a separate part for a separate discussion that is for journalists. However, the data clearly show us that this diversification has to be supported, and we have to continue this. Thank you very much, dear friends, for your participation. I would like to mention that the activity of National Platform for Sustainability and Cohesion, and this study in particular, was made with the financial support from the EU. All questions can be asked on Facebook or website of the National Platform. Our experts are open to answers and to have dialogue. Maybe if there is a request for the interview, please come to us. Thank you and see you.